Hey guys, so obviously that was a massively energy sapping performance. I've got to be honest, like, where do you even start with a performance that shocking, that terrible, that awful again from Manchester United? The thing that surprised me most since we've seen that game, I saw a stat, the expected goals. Apparently, we had 2.47 expected goals. Now, aside from that Martial chance in the first half that he absolutely should have buried, and the penalty, I'm not really sure where we got the rest of that from, but we didn't look like we were in control of the game. At no point did we look like we were dominating the game or any of that sort of stuff. And it was a really, really, honestly, poor and maybe even tragic performance from United. So I'm really not impressed with that. And for me, it's the same problems we've been seeing all season, and that's what makes it so frustrating and so, in some ways, difficult to talk about and begin to analyse. And that I've been saying all season, you've got those fantastic players. You've got Fernandes, you've got Rashford, Martial, Mata. They're all better when they're closer to goal and in nice central pockets of space. So how are you going to create those pockets of space for the players then? How are you going to go about doing that? And again, once again, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has shown he's got not a clue on how to set up a team to play to your strengths. So we know we've got players that are good in those spaces. Get them into those spaces then. And how do you facilitate getting them into the spaces? Well, firstly, you need to stretch the defence so that those pockets actually exist. If you don't stretch the defence like this, those players go infield, the fullbacks can follow them, the midfield tightens up, and all of a sudden, Rashford, Martial and Mata are all behind the opposition midfield and marked by a defender as well at the same time. All it takes, push your fullbacks higher up, the wing-backs have to worry about those, and there's a tiny bit more space. And that is all the likes of Mata, Martial and Rashford need in between the midfield and defence. So it's not rocket science, it's not that difficult. Solskjaer just has to start thinking about how you facilitate your players to play in a way that you want them to play. It's the same problems throughout the entire season. And that's what's so frustrating to talk about. You look at it in terms of why we couldn't move the ball forwards, why we weren't able to control the game, why we weren't dominating, why we weren't sustaining our attacks. We've got the exact same thing. We've got Fred and Matic, they're sitting too deep receiving the ball. We're not able to progress the ball through to our front three and Bruno Fernandes. And because of that, Fernandes has to keep dropping deep to come and pick up the ball from the centre-backs and then try and dictate play from deep. And all of a sudden, you've got the same thing happening as we've had pretty much every game so far. Martial, Rashford, sorry, that's Martial, that's Rashford, and that's Mata. They're all in spaces that are completely unreachable, barring a ridiculous eye of the needle pass, which no one else has the quality to pull off. So all you end up with is Rashford's basically out of the game because he's behind the midfield and on the last man. Martial's out of the game for the same reason. Mata's in a pocket of space, but when he's the only one, it's really easy for two players to be marking him the whole time and he can't get anywhere near the ball. We need, Bruno Fernandes in particular, you've got to stay in that number 10 role. You've got to stay in that central area, being that link player, picking up pockets of space to allow Rashford and Mata, when we're trying to build from deep, to get the ball in wider positions without so much pressure on them straight away. So they can actually get the ball in those wide areas. Don't know why I've made that one smaller. Get the ball in those wide areas and play the ball back in field with a little bit of time. Just that little bit of time. Whatever you do, we just need to make sure you're holding the defence, spreading them out, and allowing a little bit more time for ourselves on the ball. We shoot ourselves in the foot every week. We make it difficult for ourselves to progress the ball, difficult for ourselves to create chances and retain possession. It's the same issues constantly. Now look, I've got to say, I was quite impressed with Fred today. I think defensively especially, he worked really hard. He had, it was everywhere. There were times when he was popping up in the right back position. There was one nice chance actually, where Tellez did hold his width, get high up the pitch, allowed Rashford to come inside a bit. But Fred started the move out on this wing. I think him and Bruno or him and Matic were pretty much next to each other out on the right-hand side. And that ball sort of worked its way across. And by the time it was at Alex Tellez's feet, him and Rashford had a little bit of interplay. And then all of a sudden, Fred was there, getting the ball from Tellez and playing that ball back into the box. So I think Fred was one shining light in a terrible, terrible performance. Sadly, the same can't be said for Nemanja Matic, who was absolutely horrible today. I think defensively he was nowhere near good enough. Let the ball through him far too easily. You can at least make a tackle if the ball's like a metre away from you. Those are the times. Just don't let someone through you. If you have to bring him down, bring him down. Just don't let the ball through you so easily. Matic was horrible today. In possession, not brilliant, but defensively, woeful. And it's just so irritating for a United fan to be seeing the same problems every single game. Look, when Edinson Cavani came on, he made a difference. His movement was sharp, he was good. But again, he was far too isolated because the structures around him weren't in place properly. We need our midfield higher up the pitch, whether that's Fred and McTominay, whether it's Matic and McTominay, Matic and Fred, whatever combination you go for, get them higher up the pitch. Make sure Bruno holds his role in that central area, and we can actually progress the ball. Mata as well, he was popping up on the left far too often. And if he does that, Wan-Bissaka, he doesn't have the intelligence, he doesn't realise straight away, or maybe he's been told not to, so he can protect Lindelof. But he wasn't getting high up enough on the right to actually hold the defence. So all it meant was that as soon as Mata went over to the left over here, West Brom just shuffle across, and all of a sudden, it's really, really, really difficult for us to play through. Surprise. Been happening all season. On Wan-Bissaka again, just a note of warning defensively in terms of what he's been doing. Once again, in that I think it was first half, but he got done by 1-2 once again, which always seems to happen, where one player sort of goes there, another player's on Lindelof, pass there, and as soon as this wing back here has given that ball to that other player on Lindelof, Wan-Bissaka just switches off. He reacts far too slowly, takes an age to turn round, and that man's gone. To be fair, I think it happened here on the pitch instead. It was basically in the United penalty area, down in the wide areas. And so it could have cost us a goal from a pullback. Thankfully, it didn't. But Wan-Bissaka keeps making the same mistake time after time after time. He's been doing it at least since Sevilla in the Europa League, whatever, semi-final we made it to last year. So it's really important that Wan-Bissaka, get a grip, sort yourself out, stop making the same mistake every week. It's not just Wan-Bissaka, it's Matic doing the same thing. He's been poor this season. Solskjaer's making the same mistakes. And the next thing we're coming on to, team selection here, right? Well, how do you want to play? Do you want to create one-on-ones with your wide players? Do you want to get Rashford and, Dan James or Martial on the wings so that they can go one-on-one with their fullback and get the ball into the box? Okay, fine. That's one style of play. How are you going to facilitate that? Are your fullbacks going to go forward, or are they going to hold back because that will stop them dragging an extra defender into the way of the winger? One thing to consider. Second thing to consider, if they're going to go wide and try and get those balls into the box after those one-on-ones with their fullback, who's in the box to finish off the chances? Because if Rashford's doing that, Martial's loitering on the edge, Fernandes is out here trying to give the ball to Rashford or whatever, who's in the box? No one. And then what's the point of playing like that? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then you go and bring on Van de Beek later on in the game. Bring him on for Mata, I think it was. And Van de Beek stuck out here on the wing, really wide. And yeah, I know he's an intelligent player. I know he can play anywhere. But he's better off in these central areas. But he just felt he had to hold the width because Wan-Bissaka wasn't doing his job. It just doesn't make any sense. The whole style from the team, the whole way we're trying to play, it's completely incoherent. It doesn't make any sense. And that all comes from the coaching staff. Honestly, it's an absolute disgrace from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer right now. And I don't understand how he can continue to defend this every week. We're not seeing progress in the areas of the game that we've been deficient in for so long. So, Walid said, Ole out. You know what, honestly, I wouldn't say I'm Ole out, but yeah, I wouldn't say I'm Ole out at this point, but it's getting really, really hard to defend him, to be perfectly honest. It's a really tough one. In terms of the other thing I want to say, space vacation. So you got Martial or Rashford on the ball in this case, dropping deep to try and sort of drag a defender. And all of a sudden, obviously the fullback comes with him. There's a massive space that's opened up around here. But no one goes into it. It's just like, it's as if these players have never played together before. It's as if they don't know what they're going to do. They're having to react to their teammates' movements in the exact same time as the opposition is, rather than having some idea what their teammates are going to do and being able to profit off sort of one player moving and space opening up. There's not that coherence yet. They're not playing together well. It's just not gelled. And these players, the vast majority of them, have been playing together for long enough that this really shouldn't be a problem anymore. There's far too many things wrong right now, and it's just not good enough. We talk about United out of possession, pressing structures. It's non-existent again. Like we didn't look like we were pressing coherently. Sometimes you got Fernandes pressing the keeper, and then is Rashford pressing his man out